To family, I feel a holy weight on this word. God said, please listen before October 2. Not tomorrow, not someday in the future, but now. God's voice always carries purpose. To when he says listen, he is not sounding an alarm of fear, but an invitation of love. He is positioning his people for a moment in time, a window of grace, where obedience will mean more than it usually does. To October 2 is not just a date on the calendar, it is a divine marker. It is as if heaven is drawing a line and saying, this is the moment where your yes matters. But hear me listening is not the same as hearing. To many hear sermons, prophecies, or whispers in prayer, but listening means responding. It means taking what God says and letting it shift your priorities, your schedule, your heart. Why does he ask us to listen before? Because preparation always unlocks protection. When Noah built the ark, the rain had not yet come, but the obedience became the very instrument of salvation. When Israel applied the blood to the doorposts, the angel had not yet passed over, but their obedience became the shield. So it is with us now. God is whispering, listen, prepare. Align, not because he is angry, but because he wants his people positioned for breakthrough. To friends, whenever God speaks urgently, it is because heaven is about to move. Something in the earth is shifting, and God never allows his people to be left unaware. The Spirit always gives a warning. Always gives an invitation before a mighty move. So I ask you, what has God been nudging you to do? What has he been calling you to lay down, to pick up, to restore, or to forgive? Do not wait until October 2 to obey. To your yes, today could be the seed of the miracle you will need tomorrow. This is not a message of fear, but of faith. God says, I am calling my people to attention. I am aligning hearts with heaven's timing. I am about to do what only I can do. Beloved, please listen before October 2. Because what you prepare for today will become the testimony you rejoice over tomorrow. When God speaks with urgency, we often misinterpret his tone. Our human tendency is to assume that urgency means danger, that it carries the weight of fear, or that it is the prelude to something terrible. But when God says, please listen, his urgency is never rooted in fear, nor is it designed to intimidate his people. His urgency is born out of his love. Every call from the Father is an invitation into alignment, an invitation to walk closer, to adjust our steps, and to live in the flow of his perfect will. Fear drives people away, but love draws them in. That is why when the Lord presses upon our hearts with urgency, it is because his heart is burning with compassion, longing to save, protect, and bless. Think of a parent calling out to their child who is about to step into danger. The tone may be sharp, the urgency undeniable, but the root is never fear for fear's sake. It is love crying out, don't go that way, I want to protect you. In the same way, when God gives us an instruction that carries the weight of time, when he says, before this moment, listen, he is not looking to overwhelm us with dread. He is extending his arms to shield us with love. His urgency carries the fragrance of heaven's mercy. It is not punishment being announced, but protection being offered. We must train our hearts to hear his tone correctly. If we hear through the filter of fear, we will assume he is angry. If we hear through the filter of love, we will recognize he is inviting us to be part of his heart's desire. This is why the Spirit keeps reminding us to tune our ears to his nature. God's nature is goodness. His voice is always consistent with his love. Even his corrections come wrapped in mercy, and his warnings are saturated with the promise of grace. The urgency of God is also a sign of his trust. He speaks urgently because he believes his people will respond. He speaks as a loving father who knows his children are capable of saying yes. He is not begging, he is calling. He is not threatening, he is urging. When he says please listen, he believes there are hearts ready to respond to his whisper. That is why this moment matters. Urgency is not to frighten you into action. It is to awaken you into obedience. It is not the sound of a hammer, but the sound of a bell ringing clearly, calling the bride to prepare. If we understood how deeply his urgency is tied to his love, we would never resist his call. The world teaches us that urgency means panic, but the kingdom teaches us that urgency means preparation. God's urgent call is him saying, I am about to move, and I want you to be part of it. I do not want you to miss it. I want you aligned, ready and in step with me. What a tender love that the creator of the universe would not only move, but would give his people advance notice. What a mercy that he would not leave us to stumble blindly, but would call us into readiness. His urgency is his way of drawing us close before the storm, not casting us out into it. Consider how Jesus spoke to his disciples. He would often say, watch and pray, or stay awake, or let those who have ears to hear, hear. Each of those statements carried urgency, but none of them were rooted in condemnation. They were invitations to alignment. He was saying, I am doing something. Don't let distraction steal it from you. The same voice speaks to us today. The Spirit is still saying, listen now. That word is not meant to strike fear in us, but to strike faith within us. It is his way of saying, I want you ready, because what's coming is not against you, it's for you. The love of God always precedes his move. If he warns, it is because he loves. If he instructs, it is because he cares. If he urges, it is because he sees a bigger picture than we can see. We look at dates and seasons and wonder what might happen. He looks at his children and says, if you stay near me, whatever happens, you will stand. You will flourish. You will overcome. This is the nature of his urgency. It is not doom knocking at the door, but destiny calling your name. When you hear the Lord's voice pressing on your heart, remember that urgency does not mean fear. It means there is something significant he does not want you to miss. It means there is a window of grace he is inviting you to step through. It means there is a preparation of the heart that will unlock his protection and position you for breakthrough. When he says, please listen, it is a holy moment of divine alignment. Do not treat it as heaviness, treat it as mercy. Do not see it as threat, see it as love. This is the heart of God. Urgency is not his way of frightening his people. It is his way of gathering them. His urgency is born of love, too, and that love is always trustworthy. When he says, please listen before the appointed time, he is saying, I have something for you. I have a blessing in store. I have a covering prepared. Do not miss it. And when we choose to respond to his voice in love, we will discover that his urgency was never a burden, but the sweetest expression of his care. There are moments in life when obedience carries unusual weight. Not every season is the same, and not every act of obedience produces the same immediate impact. There are windows, holy moments, when heaven opens in a unique way, and what you do in those moments echoes louder than in ordinary times. These are what we call divine timings. They are opportunities not to be wasted, because the fruit of obedience in those windows is multiplied. It is as if God marks the calendar of heaven and says, this is the time I will honor obedience in extraordinary ways. Such seasons are not always predictable to the human eye, but the Spirit makes them known to those who are listening. October 2 is one of those markers. It is not just another day passing by, not just another number we flip on the calendar. It is a prophetic window, a moment God has highlighted as a time of alignment. What does alignment mean? It means bringing every part of your life into agreement with the will of heaven. It is like tuning an instrument. When you align the strings properly, the sound carries clarity and power. When your heart, your decisions, your faith, and your actions align with God in a season he has marked, the results go beyond natural effort. They carry the breath of heaven. And your obedience becomes multiplied in effect. Throughout Scripture, we see this principle. Noah built the ark long before the rain came, but there was a window of time in which his obedience mattered. Once that window closed, it was no longer about building. It was about enduring. The Israelites had to march around Jericho, not at any random time, but in the exact timing God instructed. Their obedience during that window released the walls to fall. The widow who fed Elijah gave her bread at the exact time she was asked, and it sustained her through famine. All of these are pictures of grace windows, moments in history where the timing of obedience produced supernatural breakthrough. What does this mean for us now? It means that October 2 is a line in the sand, a signal from heaven that obedience leading up to this date carries unusual significance. God is not bound by time, but he often uses time to train our hearts, to call us into awareness, and to test our readiness. When he highlights a moment, he is saying, do not miss this opportunity, because what you do now will shape what comes next. It is not superstition. It is not fear. It is divine alignment. It is God saying, this is the moment where your yes matters more than usual. The beauty of grace windows is that they are always drenched in mercy. God is not looking to trap anyone in failure. He gives advance notice because he longs to draw his people into blessing. He is not saying, if you miss this, I will condemn you. He is saying, if you respond to me now, you will step into acceleration. You will walk in a blessing that far outweighs your effort. You will see doors open that should have taken years. Grace multiplies what obedience sows. That is the nature of these divine timings. October 2 is not just a date to circle with worry, but with expectation. It is a spiritual marker of alignment. It is as if the Lord is calling his people to posture their hearts, to reevaluate their steps, to bring everything under his covering. What in your life needs to be aligned with his will? Is it your prayer life, your relationships, your priorities, your finances, your time? This is the season to bring it all into order. 2, because what you align now will determine the harvest you carry into the next season. Alignment is never about perfection. It is about direction. God is not waiting for flawless lives. He is looking for willing hearts. 2, a window of grace means that if you take even small steps of obedience now, they will carry disproportionate impact. What might have taken years of striving can shift quickly in a season of alignment. 2, that is the power of these windows. They redeem time, they accelerate progress, they multiply outcomes. When God marks a date, He is not putting pressure on His children. He is inviting them into partnership. He is saying, 2, I am doing something and I want you to be part of it. Align yourself with me and watch what happens. The call to listen before October 2 is not a threat of doom. It is an invitation into destiny. It is God's way of saying, 2, your obedience now matters more than you realize. Do not delay, because this window carries grace beyond measure. Think of the farmer who plants seeds just before the rainy season begins. 2, his timing ensures that the rain waters the ground and the harvest comes in fullness. If he waits too long, he misses the rain. The seed might still grow, but it will not flourish as it could have. 2, October 2 is like the beginning of a rain season in the Spirit. If you plant your obedience before then, the showers of grace will water it, and your harvest will be greater than you imagined. This is the heart of God, not to burden us with deadlines, but to awaken us to opportunities. Seasons of grace have windows, and those who step through them carry testimonies that mark generations. October 2 is one such window. 2, it is a spiritual marker of alignment, a time to say yes, a time to prepare, a time to trust. Do not let this moment slip by. Obedience in this season will open doors in the next. And when you look back, you will see that God's call to listen before October 2 was not about fear, but about positioning you for blessing beyond measure. There is a profound difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is a natural function of the ear. It is the process of sound waves entering and registering in our mind. But listening is something much deeper. Listening involves the heart, not just the ear. Listening demands response. Not just awareness. You can hear 100 sermons, 1,000 scriptures, or 1,000,000 words, but until your heart leans in with faith and obedience, you have not truly listened. God is not impressed with how much we hear. 2, He is looking for people who listen, who take His words as living bread, and who act upon them with trust. Jesus Himself often said, who has ears, let him hear. He was not speaking about physical ears. Everyone around Him already had those. He was pointing to the posture of the heart. The Pharisees heard His words but did not listen. They processed His teaching but never responded in faith. Meanwhile, the broken, the hungry, the desperate, they not only heard but listened, and their lives were changed. 2, the woman with the issue of blood listened when she heard about Him and pressed through the crowd. Blind Bartimaeus listened when he cried out all the louder despite being told to stay silent. 2, the centurion listened when Jesus spoke about authority and believed with a simple word. Listening is what moved them from hearing stories to living miracles. When God speaks, His words carry life. 2, but that life is only unlocked by those who respond. Hearing alone can leave you unchanged, but listening births transformation. Think of Israel in the wilderness. They heard God's instructions. They heard the promises. 2, they heard the warnings, but many did not listen. Their ears were full of words, but their hearts were closed in unbelief. As a result, they wandered instead of entering. 2, hearing without listening can cause you to miss the very promise that was spoken over you. Listening is not passive. It is not simply nodding at the word of God. Listening is active alignment. It says, because you spoke, 2, I will act. Faith comes by hearing, but faith is proven by listening. Listening takes what was heard and plants it in the soil of obedience. That is when the seed bears fruit. This is why James writes, do not merely hear the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. To only hear is self-deception. To listen is to walk in truth. The Spirit of God is always speaking. The whisper of heaven is constant. 2, but not everyone catches it. Many hear sermons each week, yet remain unchanged because they are content with hearing. But those who step into listening find that the Word of God cuts through the noise of life, reshapes their choices. 2, and ignites their faith. Listening means that when the Spirit convicts, we do not shrug it off. When He comforts, we do not ignore it. When He calls us to step forward, we move. Listening is faith in action. Right now, the call of God is not just to hear Him, but to listen before October 2. That date is not about superstition. It is about alignment. If we only hear the warning, we may not acknowledge it and then go on unchanged. But if we listen, we will take it to heart, make adjustments, and step into obedience. That is the difference between information and transformation. Hearing informs you, but listening transforms you. Hearing fills your mind, too, but listening shapes your destiny. We must ask ourselves, what has God been speaking to me that I have only heard but not truly listened to? Have I responded or have I postponed? Delayed obedience is often disguised disobedience. 2. Listening demands immediacy because listening recognizes the urgency of God's heart. Hearing says, that's interesting. Listening says, here I am, Lord, send me. Hearing analyzes, but listening surrenders. 2. When the Spirit says, please listen, He is asking for more than our attention. He is asking for our response. And the beautiful thing is that when we listen, His voice becomes clearer. Obedience sharpens discernment. 2. Every time you respond in faith, you tune your ear more accurately to heaven's frequency. Those who listen consistently become the ones who carry God's secrets, His strategies, His guidance, too. Listening is what distinguishes those who walk in power from those who walk in theory. The truth is, many people will hear God's voice in this season, but only some will truly listen. And those who listen will walk in grace, to protection and breakthrough that others will only long for. Listening positions you under the covering of God's promises. Listening draws you into the center of His will. Listening transforms divine words into divine realities. So do not settle for hearing alone. Ask the Spirit to soften your heart to make you quick to listen, quick to obey, and quick to believe. Every word from God is an invitation, not just to be acknowledged, but to be acted upon. 2. If you hear His voice today, do not harden your heart. Choose to listen, because listening is greater than hearing. Hearing is natural, but listening is supernatural. Hearing registers sound, but listening brings transformation. 2. And in this season, when God says, please listen, He is not asking for more noise in your life. He is asking for faith in action. Respond to His whisper. Align with His heart. 2. And you will see that listening carries the very power of heaven. Preparation is one of the most underrated forms of faith. We often think of faith as the bold declaration, the mountain-moving prayer, to the miraculous moment when heaven touches earth. And yes, those are expressions of faith. But there is another side of faith that is quieter, often hidden, and yet just as powerful: preparation. 2. Preparation is the evidence that we trust God enough to get ready for what He has promised even before it arrives. Preparation is not wasted effort. It is the posture of the heart that says, I believe You, Lord. 2. And I will arrange my life according to Your word. And when we prepare in obedience, we discover a powerful truth. Preparation unlocks protection. Throughout Scripture, to God's people were often called to prepare before the shaking began. Noah spent years building an ark when there was no rain, no flood, no outward reason to believe disaster was coming. But his preparation became his protection. 2. When the rains fell and the earth shook, Noah and his family were safe because he had responded in faith beforehand. His obedience to prepare became the shield over his household. Preparation did not just save his life. 2. It preserved the future of humanity. That is how powerful readiness can be when it flows from trust in God. The Israelites in Egypt were told to prepare a lamb, sacrifice it, and place the blood over their doorposts. On that night, 2. The destroyer passed through the land, but every home marked with obedience was protected. The preparation of a simple meal, the application of blood, became a divine shield. It was not complicated. 2. But it required attention and faith. If they had delayed or ignored the command, they would have missed the covering. Again, preparation unlocked protection. We see the same principle in the parable of the wise and foolish virgins. 2. All 10 had lamps. All 10 were waiting for the bridegroom, but only 5 had prepared oil in advance. When the moment of visitation came, those who had prepared were ready to enter. The others, 2, though they had heard the same call and carried the same outward form, missed the moment because they had not postured their hearts in preparation. Preparation separated those who entered from those who were left outside. 2. It was not knowledge that protected them, it was readiness. This is why preparation matters in seasons of shaking. God never calls us to prepare out of fear, but out of love. 2. He warns us in advance because He wants us under His shield, walking in His direction. Preparation is not paranoia, it is alignment. It is adjusting your heart, your priorities, 2, and your choices so that when the winds blow and the earth trembles, you are standing on the rock, not the sand. The shaking may come, but the prepared are not shaken with it. They have already postured themselves before God. 2. Preparation is not only about physical steps, it is deeply spiritual. It is about cultivating intimacy with God now, not later. It is about strengthening your prayer life before the crisis, so that when the storm comes, 2, you are already anchored. It is about forgiving those who have hurt you, reconciling relationships, and clearing the clutter from your heart so that the enemy has no foothold. It is about filling your lamp with oil, 2, so that when the midnight cry comes, you are ready to shine. When we prepare our hearts, we become sensitive to God's direction, and His direction is often the very thing that keeps us safe in difficult times. 2, He may whisper where to go, when to move, or what to avoid. He may lead you to speak a word of encouragement that shields someone else from despair. 2, He may highlight areas of your life that need to be surrendered now so that you can walk in greater freedom later. Preparation is not just about survival, it is about positioning for purpose. 2, God prepares us not only to be protected, but also to be instruments of protection for others. We live in a time when shaking is all around, shaking in economies, nations, families, and even the church. 2, but the promise of God is sure those who build their lives on the rock of His word will stand. Preparation is building on the rock. It is taking His voice seriously enough to act today, not tomorrow. It is saying, 2, I will posture myself before God because I trust Him more than I trust the world around me. And in that place of surrender, His shield surrounds us. Preparation unlocks protection because it is faith in action. 2, it is not waiting for trouble to come before we cry out. It is walking with God daily so that when trouble does come, we are already under His covering. 2, the shield of His presence is not something we put on at the last second. It is something we carry because we chose to prepare. So do not delay. If God is calling you to prepare your heart before October 2, do it with joy, 2, not with fear. Cleanse your heart, align your steps, and lean into His voice. Preparation today will become protection tomorrow. And when the world shakes, you will find yourself standing, 2, not because you were stronger than the storm, but because you were sheltered under the one who called you to prepare. 2, those who posture their hearts before God will not only survive seasons of shaking, they will shine as testimonies of His faithfulness. And in the days to come, others will look at you and see that your preparation was never wasted. 2, for it carried you safely into the promise of God. Obedience has always been the doorway through which the supernatural is released. Many people wait for miracles, cry out for breakthrough, and long for change. 2, yet often the key is not found in striving, but in a simple yes to God's instruction. Miracles are not random events that fall from heaven without context. They are responses to faith, and faith is proven through obedience. 2, the greatest shifts in history, both in Scripture and in our own lives, happen when someone hears the voice of God and responds without delay. Breakthrough is not usually found in the dramatic, but in the simple, in the quiet. 2, in the often overlooked act of saying yes. Naaman, the Syrian commander, came to the prophet Elisha desperate for healing from leprosy. He expected some grand ritual, some spectacular display, but the instruction was simple: to go wash in the Jordan River 7 times. At first he resisted. The command seemed too ordinary, too beneath his dignity. But when he finally obeyed, his skin was restored and his breakthrough was complete. The miracle was waiting, but it required a yes. Obedience was the bridge from affliction to restoration. The widow of Zarephath had only a little flour and oil left, barely enough for her and her son. Yet when Elijah asked her to make him a cake first, she chose to obey. It seemed unreasonable, even foolish in the natural, but her yes opened the door to provision that never ran out through the entire famine. Her obedience created the atmosphere for a miracle of multiplication. 2, without her willingness to obey, the breakthrough would have remained hidden. Peter and his companions had fished all night and caught nothing, when Jesus told them to cast their nets on the other side. 2, it sounded unnecessary and even insulting to their professional knowledge. But when they obeyed, the nets overflowed with fish. The miracle was on the other side of their yes. 2, their obedience turned a night of emptiness into a moment of abundance. This is the principle. God's instructions are not tests of logic, but opportunities for trust. He is not asking us to understand everything. 2, He is asking us to believe enough to obey. Every yes to God carries within it the seed of breakthrough. It may feel small at the time, but heaven sees it as significant. 2, the reason obedience unlocks miracles is that it aligns us with God's will. Breakthrough is not manufactured by human effort. It flows from His kingdom. When we obey, we step out of our own control and into His design. 2, obedience is the language of faith. It tells God, I trust you more than my own understanding. And when heaven sees that trust, the power of God is released. Many people delay obedience, thinking they will say yes later, when it is more convenient, when they understand more, or when they feel ready. But delayed obedience often closes the window of breakthrough. The Israelites were told to enter the promised land. 2, but when they hesitated and disobeyed, the opportunity was lost and they wandered for 40 years. God still loved them, but the breakthrough attached to that moment was missed. Timing matters. 2, an obedience in the right season creates acceleration. Sometimes the instruction God gives is simple: pray for that person, forgive that offense, sow that seed, take that step of faith. 2, it may not seem connected to the miracle you are waiting for, but God sees the link. The miracle is often hidden behind the obedience. Until we say yes, the breakthrough remains unseen. But once we move in faith, the heavens respond. 2, obedience also creates breakthrough because it silences the enemy's accusations. When we walk in obedience, the enemy has no foothold to hinder what God is doing. Our yes becomes a declaration that we belong fully to God. 2, and in that place of surrender, the enemy's power is broken. The walls that seemed immovable begin to fall. In seasons like this, 2, when God is saying, listen before October 2, the call is not just to hear his word, but to obey it. There is something on the other side of your yes that you cannot yet see. It may be protection, provision, healing, or direction, 2, but the key to unlocking it is obedience. Do not underestimate the power of one simple act of trust. Do not dismiss the importance of a quiet yes whispered in prayer. That yes carries the potential to shift the course of your life. 2, breakthrough is not earned, it is released. And the release happens when God finds a heart willing to obey. It may feel small, but heaven sees it as huge. The Red Sea parted not because Moses had all the answers, 2, but because he raised his staff in obedience. Jericho's walls fell not because Israel had weapons, but because they obeyed the strange command to march and shout. Even salvation itself flows through obedience. Jesus, 2, though he was the Son of God, became obedient to death on a cross, and that yes opened the greatest breakthrough in history. If you are waiting for a miracle, ask yourself this: what instruction has God already given me? 2, what have I heard him whisper that I have yet to obey? Your yes could be the very key to the breakthrough you have been praying for. Miracles are not random. They are invitations answered. God sets the table. 2, but obedience sits you in the chair. So today, do not hesitate. Lean into his voice. Trust his instruction. Say yes quickly and wholeheartedly, because obedience creates breakthrough. 2, and the miracle you are longing for may already be standing on the other side of your yes, waiting for the door of obedience to swing wide open. Beloved, all that has been spoken comes down to this. 2, God is calling his people to listen, to align, to prepare, and to obey in this season. His urgency is never rooted in fear, but in love. His windows of grace are open for those who will step in with faith. 2, his voice is not mere sound, but an invitation to respond. Preparation of the heart will unlock his covering and direction, and simple obedience will bring breakthrough beyond what we can imagine. And when he speaks with urgency, 2, it is because heaven is on the verge of moving powerfully in the earth. October 2 is more than a date. It is a divine marker, a reminder to posture ourselves before him so that when the shaking comes, 2, we are not moved but carried by his presence. Let us not only hear these words, but truly listen. Let us posture our hearts, step into alignment, and say yes without hesitation. 2, for what we choose to do in this moment will become the testimony of God's faithfulness in the days ahead. May we be a people who respond quickly, love deeply, and trust fully in the one who speaks. Thank you.